Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Thanks for listening today. The Great God Debate is got 3 segments left. God is Not Great by Christopher Hitchens. One point of view, how religion poisons everything. The other point of view represented by Dr. Mark Roberts, markdroberts.com. His most recent book, Can the Gospels Be Trusted? I now bring up a point sent to me by Randy Elrod, who blogs at Ethos. He wanted this proposition to be put out there. An understanding of the existence of something greater than ourselves gives us the ability, as Dostoevsky states in The Brothers, to not only live, but to live for something definite. Without a firm notion of what he is living for, man will not accept life and will rather destroy himself rather than remain on earth. And, of course, he is one of the great Christian mystics, Christopher Hitchens, but do you believe that man absolutely must have some understanding of something larger than himself, meaning God, or that it becomes meaningless and insane?
Well, I think we do probably need something on the order of the transcendent in our lives, and I think humanism fulfills these needs. Incidentally, I mean, I think if you say that for you, as for me, the beauties of science, the consolations of philosophy, the study of literature as the source of ethical and moral questions, that's enough for most people's lifetimes. And to turn away from this and say, well, I'd rather go for the ancient texts that come from the childhood of our species, is, first, I think, to refuse a wonderful offer, and second, it makes it impossibly arrogant for the questioner to assume that will make you behave better. I mean, surely he knows that many people, absolutely convinced that there's a God greater than themselves, are convinced that that God is telling them to do evil. The example you just gave of people who have personal experiences that must be considered valid must be valid for everybody in that case. In that case, it is true that the Archangel Gabriel told the Prophet Muhammad what to do. It seems to have been very convincing to him and to many other people. Do you accept the validity of that or not?
No, I don't. And that...
Do you accept that Louis Farrakhan can get people off drugs by faith?
No, I don't. And that's why Mark Roberts, this is his biggest challenge.
How do you accept it for one and reject it for another?
You have to, Mark Roberts, I'll leave that question to you, because it's a question of choosing between many competing claims as to divine guidance.
Well, this is where Christopher Hitchens and I would, though I think end up in quite different places, agree that one of the things we desperately need is open-mindedness, clear thinking, the ability to ask difficult questions, to test our own hypotheses. You got to study with Karl Popper, I understand, and that would be the thing I would envy of you, having studied philosophy of science in my undergraduate days, and Popper was rather a hero there. We need to, I don't take at all every testimony at face value as true. I think we've got to examine it, look to see if it's true, test it. I believe that in my own way.
There's no standard for doing that, though, is there? It's the most objective possible thing.
Well, I happen...
And actually, you don't get terribly reassured, do you, if someone comes up to you in the street and says, I'm on a mission from God, and he's given me some instructions. Why does that not delight you if someone comes up and does that?
Well, because I happen to believe that sometimes people are on a mission from God, and sometimes they think they are and they're not, and it's not necessarily a good thing.
Well, I'd love to be with you the next time someone says that comes up to both of us and says they're hearing voices and it's God. You're going to throw your arms around him and say, you too? What luck?
But generally,
I don't know why I don't think so, but I just don't.
I actually spend quite a bit of time with people who have claims for various kinds of religious experiences, and what I do is I listen to them. I try as best I can with the tools I have and the understanding I have to discern the extent to which what they are saying is true and not. And you're right. You've said, is that a difficult thing to do? Is there some absolute standard? I don't believe there is, but I do believe.
No, there isn't. You couldn't believe that there was. You couldn't. It wouldn't be a matter of belief, would it? It would have to have something to do with proof.
Well, yeah. So
just a tiny little bit, a smidgen of evidence here and there, wouldn't kill, would it? There isn't any. That's the thing. It's just you don't judge people by what they think of themselves.
You do judge them how they. You do judge them by how they live, though.
You'd be failing them by not saying, "Look, I'm really sorry, man, but I think you're in trouble and you need help."
Well, that is actually, I've said that to different kind of people because, of course, schizophrenics also believe they have religious experiences when, in fact, they need desperately need help.
We come back. 2 segments left. The Great God Debate. Mark Roberts, Christopher Hitchens when we return to the Hugh Hewitt Show. 44 minutes after the hour, Americans. Hugh Hewitt with Christopher Hitchens, author of God is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything. Mark Roberts, author of Can We Trust the Gospels? Mark Roberts, early in the show you said that Christopher Hitchens does not seem to inhabit the same universe you do when it comes to the religious people that you know. And the conversation we just had about people walking up and talking to reminded me of that comment, because that's not really how religious people live in my experience. It's not. And they're not poisoned. They're out doing good things and living extraordinarily humble but service-filled lives. And I think maybe that's where the disconnect comes between the portrait we get out of God is Not Great and your portrait.
Well, I think if one looks at the things that religious people have done throughout history and even throughout the world today that are not good, one comes up with a certain view of what religion must be that's very different from the average experience. And here I can't speak for all religions. I can speak for what I know. I can speak for myself and my congregation of people whose faith in God is a prime motivator of goodness. I think of recently some folk from our church went down to an orphanage in Mexico, and some of the folks fixed bicycles, and some of the folks worked on teeth, because we have a couple dentists in the church. And they did that not just because they're good humanists. They did that because they're Christians, and they feel that that is what they're to do for their faith in their response to God. Now, as I look at that, it's very hard for me to see how that poisoned anything. It seems to me that greatly enriched something and helped people's lives. And so I guess I'm willing to say that sometimes religion poisons things. I'm looking for the side that says, and sometimes it doesn't.
Very well. Well, since you've both been kind enough to read my book, I don't expect you to remember every bit of it. You will grant me that I spent some time describing my encounters in northern Uganda with people who are there in a selfless way trying to repair the damage done by
the Lord's Army,
a horrible religious Christian group called the Lord's Resistance Army. And I say, well, which of you is really the faithful one? I mean, to me, it doesn't matter, because there are very large numbers of people who do that kind of work all over the world, and I've met them and can introduce you to them, who do so for its own sake, for the sake of their fellow men, for their brothers and sisters. And they don't demand any divine warrant, and they're not suspected of proselytization.
Christopher, question for you.
Now, so it's like my original challenge. You have to name an ethical action that an atheist couldn't take.
But I have a question for you.
Unbelievers who do charitable work, I don't say charity poisons everything, but in order to say that, confronted with, say, AIDS in Africa, that's bad, though, P.S., it might be God's punishment.
Now, a question for you, though.
And B, that though AIDS is bad, with condoms are worse and must be forbidden. For a really foolish, wicked thing like that, you need to be a person of faith.
You have read the Gospel, so you know what Jesus teaches, and you then go to Uganda and you see what the Lord's Army was taught, and you see what the people trying to repair the Lord's Army is taught. Which group is acting in conformance with the actual teachings of Jesus as you read them?
Well, I'd have to say both.
How could the Lord's Army be acting?
I'd have to say both. Well, the Lord's Resistance Army says that nothing will be okay in Uganda until everyone agrees with the Ten Commandments.
Jesus does not teach that. Mark Roberts, does he?
No, Jesus doesn't. No,
that's what I asked.
But Moses does.
I was asking in the teachings.
Moses is one of your.
I was asking it as you assess the teachings of Jesus and those two camps in Uganda. One is teaching Christ's love, and one is not. That's why I'm saying.
Who comes to bring not peace but a sword?